Good afternoon, my conscious co-creators. Welcome to another edition of the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. I am very, very pleased that you are all here with me today. We've got another wonderful show in store for you today with an excellent guest who I will bring on in just a moment. But first, of course, we have our blog post. Um, this week. I think a rather apropos one for our topic today. So today's blog post is entitled, When We Breathe Through Our Fear and Pain, We Can Find Our Peace. We all face fear sometime in our life, and we all face pain sometime in our life. Even though we try to avoid them as much as possible, still life happens. Situations beyond our control bring pain and fear to us. The choice to feel them or not to feel them, is always present. When we have not learned how to face them with courage, we often run away from them. To not engage with our pain or fear. Sometimes the situation demands that we don't deal with them, for we have to be clear-headed and controlled to get through the current challenge. So we push the feelings aside until we have room to deal with them. Too often, though, we never go back to actually allow these feelings to surface. Instead, we just keep pushing forward until some fantasy time in the future when we can pause. That pause never comes for some of us, until we can no longer move on with our life. The pain that we have accumulated one day becomes too much, and we have to stop. We have to listen to our body and our heart and let the energy pass through. Diving into our fear and our pain is now harder than ever before, but it seems that we have no choice. For we have been running away from our fear and our pain for so long that is no longer sustainable. We must feel our fear. We must feel our pain. And it can feel overwhelming. There is so much to feel and experience that it can seem as if it is a tidal wave about to sweep us away, until we remember to breathe deeply. When we experience our fear and our pain, we stop breathing deeply. The breath always becomes shallow and fast. If we can just slow down our breathing and take our time, the pain and fear will not be so overwhelming. By breathing deeply, we give space to our pain and fear. We allow them to have room, not just room inside of us, but room in our consciousness. As we provide more space and time to really feel the pain and fear, it lessens. They dissipate. What a minute ago felt overwhelming is now manageable. Our heart rate begins to slow. The pulse starts to come back to a normal rate. This may not happen the first time we try to do this, especially after so many years of denying our feelings. Yet if we keep at it, eventually we find our peace. We will find our way back to calm, with our breath as our guide. It will always guide us home through the fear and pain, home to our heart. No matter how broken it might feel, the breath will help it to be whole again, and allow us to go on living our life with greater presence. For when we allow ourselves to truly feel those deeply uncomfortable emotions, we will also be able to feel the expansive emotions of joy and love even more. That is the reward of breathing through our pain and our fear. So I, I wrote this post a couple of years ago, not just out of my own experiences, but I believe I was working with a client and they were having a really hard time. Something very emotionally painful was coming up for them. And and literally there was no way through. There was no way to, at the moment, to help them to feel better. And so all I could support them in was just connecting to their breath. And this is where I've found the greatest support. And I've had those experiences where just all this fear came up or all this pain came up and I could feel it in my body. And I couldn't escape it. And not that I necessarily at the time wanted to escape it, but there was nowhere to go because it was so present because I'd been stuffing it down for so long, for so many years in my life. And that finally I was giving it the room and the space to come up. And it was a lot. And it was a lot. And all I could do was just breathe through it, was just keep coming back to my breath. And it was kind of like, I mean, it could literally felt like how my body might have responded to like a tiger chasing me in the forest or a lion chasing me in the savannah. And our breath is fast and shallow. And it's like, and the hardest thing I could do was to just slow it down. Just low, long, deep breaths. And I just started to do it. And I kept doing it. And I kept doing it. And I kept doing it. And literally the process I probably went through for 2 or 3 or 4 hours until I was able to really release or breathe through so much of that fear and pain. And so when I work with people and I see them stuck in this pain, in this fear, I mean, look, it's uncomfortable for me to witness, let alone experience. And sometimes I forget, and sometimes I try and take them out of the experience, which is the exact wrong thing to do. So I've learned over time to really just be present to it, just allow that fear and pain to just be present and just support them with their breath. Now, look, are there other techniques to help get through fear and pain? Absolutely. But sometimes the simplest, most trite techniques are the ones that work the best and are so universal. Because sometimes a technique works for one person and it doesn't work for someone else. But the most important thing I feel that we often forget is to just be present to it, is to just allow these feelings, these emotions, this energy to run through us. Because if we don't give it space to get metabolized and we just hold on to it and stuff it down, eventually that's going to lead to dis-ease. Eventually it's going to lead to illness. eventually it's going to lead to the body responding to that energy in some fashion. And so as challenging and as difficult as it is to be present to the fear and the pain, it is literally the healthiest thing we can do. And look, you don't have to sit in it for hours like I've done. You don't have to sit in it longer than you feel you're able to. Yet the more we can be present to it, the more we can allow space to it, the more we can just breathe through it, the more it serves us. And the interesting byproduct to all of this is the more present we are to it, then the less we carry it. And the less we carry it, the easier it is to truly be present with the other person, to truly be present with the people in our lives, and to be able to give them our full attention and to gift them with a deeper experience of our presence. And I'm sure there are a multitude of other benefits that come from doing this. But when you're going through it, you're not thinking about any of that. You're just thinking, how the hell am I going to get through this? And in my experience, our nervous system just won't allow us to experience anything that we can't get through. So just know if the fear or the pain or the agony, the sense of loss, of grief, or whatever that uncomfortable feeling is for you, whatever it is, give it room, give it space, allow it the opportunity to fully be felt. In the moment, it feels awful. But once you get past it, you feel so much lighter and so much better. You'll be glad you did. So that's our blog post for this week. The title again is When We Breathe Through Our Fear and Pain, We Can Find Our Peace. And of course, you can always find my blog post on my personally branded website, theconsciousconsultant.com, and on the station's website at talkradio.nyc/blog. All right. Now, it is my extreme pleasure to welcome to the show uh, Nikolai Blinow, licensed mental health counselor, coach, and creator of the Calm Hustle Method. Nikolai works with neurodivergent women in leadership, helping them navigate burnout, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and the quieter, often unnamed traumas of growing up neurodivergent in a neurotypical world. Her clinical training in dialectic behavior therapy and EMDR combined, and for those who don't know what it is, EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is a form of a somatic form of therapy, combined with years as a yoga teacher, gives her a rare vantage point at the meeting place of nervous system science and embodied practice. Her TEDx talk, Yoga and Its Connection to Mental Health, has been viewed over 300,000 times and stands as clear evidence of her long-held belief that holistic and scientific principles belong in the same conversation. At the heart of Nikolai's work is a reframe that changes everything. Motivation, procrastination, burnout, and the relentless inner critic are not character flaws or discipline problems. They are nervous system responses, often shaped by childhood experience, financial insecurity, trauma, perfectionism, and the way neurodivergent brains process stress, motivation, and reward. Traditional productivity advice largely misses this, which is why so many capable, ambitious women find themselves working harder and feeling worse. Through the calm hustle method, Nikolai helps women break out of survival mode without dismantling the careers and businesses they've worked hard to build, guiding them from the exhausted state of force into the sustainable rhythm of flow. Welcome to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Nikolai.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And it feels very serendipitous. The blog post that you read today feels like it lines up so nicely with what we're talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just take them in order, but somehow they always seem so apropos for the conversation that day.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, how did you decide to focus on neurodivergent women? That's a very, well, it's a broad but specific kind of niche, and you don't often see that niche getting much attention in the mass media.
Yeah, I think we are starting to see more of it, which is good. But I came to this work because for years and years and years previously in my therapy practice, I was doing a lot of work around burnout,
Mm,
which I think lines up with my previous background in yoga and holistic principles. Um, I really have always taken a mind, body, spirit approach to my work. And so I don't think it's shocking that early in my career, a lot of burnt out people were seeking me out. And as I was doing that, I started to develop a real talent or skill, if you will, for being able to identify previously undiagnosed neurodiverse people. I
mm,
primarily work with ADHD, so it's usually
mhm,
ADHD, um, who were flying under the radar for many years and yet ending up in my office extremely burnt out. And so I was diagnosing people if they wanted it, because I don't think you need a diagnosis, but I'm happy to give it
mhm,
to a person if they want it.
mhm,
Potentially referring them out for second opinions and getting that confirmed. And then I realized, huh, there's a lot of really intelligent, really hardworking people who are susceptible to burnout and nervous system dysregulation and a myriad of other problems that come with that in the mind and body, if we want to talk about it, who are neurodiverse. And a lot of them don't know it. And so it really became, I think, more of a passion of mine to support this group of people because, A, like I said, we are starting to see more in the world for neurodiverse women, which is great because neurodiversity tends to present differently in women than it does in men, which we can also
mm,
talk about if you're interested. But I also think this particular group of people, I think sometimes we have stereotypes of what we think an ADHD person might look like, or an
mhm,
ADHD person, which is a person who has high functioning autism and ADHD.
mm,
Um, but a lot of the people I work with are executives, entrepreneurs, people in leadership. Um, and on the outside, they don't present as disorganized, people who procrastinate, people
mm,
who maybe march to the beat of their own drum, which is, I think, what some people out in the world expect when they don't know much about the actual sort of
yeah.
lived experience and the science of ADHD. But there's a lot of people who are perfectionist, highly organized, maybe even a little OCD. And they're just not getting the care and attention they need. And if you have those tendencies, and we can again talk about this, I think the perfectionism, the overachieverness, the over planningness actually becomes a double-edged sword where it makes people
Mm,
feel like they're very on top of things, but it actually contributes in the long term to the nervous system dysregulation and the
mm.
burnout and the stress.
You know, neurodiversity is often mentioned and talked about, but I don't often hear it defined. And
Mm,
one of the things I like to do is to be clear about language and what we're talking about, because
mm,
people might have an idea or an image of what neurodiversity is.
Mhm.
But for the sake of this conversation, I would like to be clear of what your definition is for neurodiversity. Because I also, I hear some people term it neurospicy because there's a wide variety to it. But neurodiversity.
Yeah, I like my clients like the term neurospicy a lot too. So sometimes I use that term because I think it depends what lens we're looking through. I mean, I have my good old fashioned DSM-5 over here somewhere because I'm a
Ah,
licensed therapist.
uh-huh.
And if we look at things through a clinical medical lens, there's a bunch of different diagnoses, if you will, that would fall
Mhm.
under the umbrella of being neurodiverse. ADHD being one of them, autism spectrum disorder being another.
Mhm.
Those are not the only ones. Um, I and I think when we look at neurodiversity through that lens, sometimes that can feel like there's something wrong with a
Mhm.
person's
Mhm.
brain and their nervous system. I personally think of neurodiversity as just a difference in sort of brain wiring and nervous system
Mhm.
regulation. And depending who you ask, they'll say about 10 to 20% of people are neurodiverse. And again, that can
Mhm.
include ADHD, autism. Some people would say highly sensitive people are
Mhm.
neurodiverse, although there's no acknowledgement in the
Yeah.
diagnostic criteria for high sensitivity. I think it's just people whose brains and bodies are wired slightly differently, and so they experience the world differently. And because you're experiencing the world differently, you're literally processing information differently
Mhm.
as you're just going about living your life. You're going to have a different experience. And sometimes that can be very dysregulating for our nervous system because 80%, maybe more, of the world and the people you're spending your time around are having a different experience.
Right. One of the key words I heard you say was spectrum. The
Mhm.
that because this concept of neurodiversity, it's a spectrum of things. It's a broad range and can look very differently for different people. So how would someone know if they kind of fall into that spectrum or not? Like what makes somebody neurodiverse? Like a client comes to you and you observe them for a while and you kind of get a feeling, they might be on the spectrum. What would be the presentation of that to give you that impression?
I think there's a lot of different things. Um, if we look at diagnostic criteria, right? If we were going to
Mhm.
get super clinical about it, if we think about something like ADHD, it tends to be patterns of looking at your life and finding periods where you maybe have intense periods of being able to be hyper focused,
Mhm.
but then other times not so much.
Mhm.
If we think about things like autism spectrum disorder, looking at do you have a tendency for like repetitive behaviors? Is there sort of an intense inner world that you experience that feels different? Um, I, being a nervous system person who also is a holistic provider, um, I like to, in some ways, keep it simple for people. And I think signs that I see that a person is neurodiverse and may not know it are if you have a tendency to burn out, there is a lot of good data that neurodiverse people genuinely are more sensitive to environmental stimuli than neurotypical people.
Mhm.
And that because of that, they are more susceptible to burning out depending on the quality of the environments that they're in. If they're in very
Mhm.
negative environments, if we're
Mhm.
talking workplaces or very loud,
Mhm.
overstimulating environments, if you feel like you're very sensitive to the world around you, could be because there's some sort of neurodiversity.
Mhm.
I also see a lot of executive functioning, but not in traditional ways, working memory. I am an ADHD woman, and I'll be the first
Mhm.
one to tell you. I could tell you something a client told me 5 years ago verbatim at an intake, but if I told myself I wanted to make a personal phone call to like a credit card company or something over my lunch break today, if
Mhm.
I don't write it down, I can't promise that I'm going to remember that I wanted to do that. And I think the working memory is like a really good indicator of potential neurodiversity
Mm.
where um, you can function super well, but sometimes little things just seem to like not
Mm.
stick. And
Mm.
that's definitely one for me. I joke every time I go to a dentist appointment or a haircut, I say, you need to give me an appointment before I leave because if I don't leave with an appointment, you might not see me for 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I'll just keep thinking I have to call and make the appointment and then
And
I'll
not
keep
actually
forgetting.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. So you said before that neurodiversity presents different in men and women.
Mhm.
Just I'm curious, like what are the main differences?
Yeah. So a lot of the original criteria, if we're talking medical model, which I have a dialectic relationship with, which means I see the
Hmm.
benefits of the medical model and I also see the detriments or the downsides to it. Um,
Hmm.
but it influences a lot of our culture and our attitudes towards neurodivergence. Basically, a lot of the criticisms are historically, so much of the research was done on men and specifically young boys.
Hmm.
And what we are tending to see in women, and I think this is maybe also part just like gender socialization, boys seem much more likely to have externally manifesting forms of neurodivergence. And so they're much more likely to get diagnosed. What I mean by that is like when they're in school, they're the more likely to be disruptive ones.
Hmm.
They're being hyperactive, they're having trouble waiting their turn. Um, Women, there's always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, what we see is their neurodivergence tends to manifest more inwardly.
Hmm.
So, ADHD, for example,
Hmm.
stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Men, they find, are more likely to have the hyperactivity that comes out on the outside.
Um,
Women, the hyperactivity turns inward. So they tend to have more of a hyperactive brain,
hmm.
a lot of thinking, maybe even potential obsessive or OCD like thoughts. But the
Hmm.
outside world may not be seeing the manifestation of that, which is
Hmm.
why a lot of them don't get diagnosed or get the support
Hmm.
that they want because they're dealing with it all inside of themselves.
Hmm. I see. I see. So more external versus internal
Mhm.
thing. Interesting. Interesting. Um, and just before we take our break, I'm just curious, why did you decide to become a therapist?
Why did I decide to become a therapist? Well, I'm a neurodiverse person myself. I have ADHD, but I did not know it until later in life.
Hmm.
And personally, I come from a background where one of my parents is an immigrant from Eastern Europe and my other parent is American. And why that becomes relevant is I got a lot of messaging growing up about like creating the American dream, but also making sure I had stability. And so I worked really hard, I think probably my whole life, got what I thought was going to be my dream job, and then realized, hmm, it's not really that fulfilling to me. It was fine. I
Hmm.
worked in corporate institutional fundraising.
Uh,
And so I raised money I actually focused on higher education because I felt like I was raising money, but I was raising money for higher education. It was a nice blend of
hmm.
having a job that felt stable, but also values based.
Hmm.
I didn't love it. It wasn't fulfilling. And so I just did some soul searching. I actually went for my birthday one year to Costa Rica, and it was a very eye opening trip for me. And I thought, huh, I'm going to be happy. What can I do that's just going to make me happy? But I'm not independently wealthy, so I still have to earn a living and I want to do work that I enjoy. And what I came to is in my fundraising work, I got to work with people. That's what you do when you fundraise. You basically get
Hmm.
to know them
Hmm.
so you can ask them to give you money.
Hmm. Yeah.
I liked that part. I liked the people of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't like that the end game felt like it was tied towards something that I personally wasn't connected to. And also, as a neurodiverse person, I have had a long-standing habit of being able to basically perform very well at every job I've ever done, which when you're in a corporate setting means they will just give you more work.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, if I become a therapist, I can literally just work with people for a living, which is something I really like about my job. Um, Instead of having to sell them on donating to whatever cause I work for,
Hmm.
I get to figure out their goals and sell them on their own goals. And I can be autonomous, right? I can open my own practice and I can sort of work on my terms in a way that still allows me to do great work with my clients, but also gives me sort of time and energy freedom. So it's a bit of a long journey to get there and come to those insights, but feel very grateful.
Yeah. So I don't remember if I mentioned it in our pre-interview. My wife is a therapist also, and she's also a highly sensitive person, so neurodiverse as well. I
So
understand.
she understands me. We probably would get along great.
I bet you would. I bet you would. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to ask you about your TEDx talk about yoga and the connection to mental health and really get into the more somatic side of mental wellness and what we can do somatically to really support having a better life. Okay?
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We do this every Wednesday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on talkradio.nyc and all over social media. And we'll be right back with our guest, Nikolai Blinow, in just a moment. Are you a spiritual seeker? Are you interested in expanded states of reality? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will dive into these topics with authors, teachers, researchers, and guides. Tune in at our new time, Wednesdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Wednesdays, 12 noon Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. So Nikolai, you did a TEDx talk, yoga and its connection to mental health. Tell us about that. What is the connection to mental health?
Yeah, it's been a journey. When I started my graduate program, full disclosure, I was looking at a lot of holistically oriented programs, and I ended up not at a holistically oriented program because I was given a grad assistantship, which was a great opportunity for me to go to school and get
Mhm.
my education at no cost. Um, but the reason I share that is because my entire graduate school training, I was told yoga is not mental health. Um, for the whole time, it should be separate things, and I always felt a little bit disconnected from that. And I'm
Mhm.
happy to see that now things have come a little bit more full circle, and you see a lot of people in the trauma world, like Bessel van der Kolk, using
Mhm.
yoga and somatic therapies. So I feel like maybe my TED talk in some ways was a bit of like a healing moment for me to take my life with my personal yoga practice and my life teaching it my training sort of as a clinical therapist and really almost advocate for the overlap between the two because I found my personal yoga practice when I went to college when I was like 18 or 19 years old. Um, I have more of a meditation practice now versus like a formal yoga or asana practice, which for people who don't
Mhm.
know yoga, asana is a lot of times what we think about as yoga. It's like when you go to the class and you do the poses.
Mhm.
Um, but I had many moments when I was doing my graduate school training having thoughts very similar to what you shared in your blog post, right? Like when we are sitting in a therapy experience with someone, often we're helping them work through uncomfortable emotions. And
Yep.
so much historically, therapy has been about getting people into their heads and sort of
Yep.
analyzing why they act that way or finding meaning from it. But I've always felt like, isn't your body also having an experience? And when I think about my experience being in yoga classes, I think about, oh, how many times did they put me into poses that were like really hard and really uncomfortable?
Uh,
And I had to breathe through it. Or I had to learn to just check in with my body and find like, when should I just breathe through it? Or
mhm.
when should I maybe just tap out a little bit, take a child's pose or a downward
Mhm.
dog and take a rest?
Mhm.
And for me, I think that is mental health. Um, Maybe at like the most microcosmic level, right? Like that
Mhm.
is your body learning to engage with discomfort and comfort and being
Mhm.
present and recognizing the tendency to not want to be present and watching the monkey
Mhm.
mind float around and distract itself. Like when you're in a yoga class, I think you are also working on your mental health. And maybe it's just not always as overt and obvious as when you're sitting in an office with a therapist.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so you developed this method, you call it the calm hustle method.
Mhm.
Um, where did this method come from and how does it help neurodiverse women leaders?
Yeah, it comes from years of me sort of sitting in front of people, bringing in holistic yoga principles, somatic principles, EMDR, which is technically a trauma treatment, or DBT, which is the other clinical practice I do. Um, and really just watching for themes in my clients,
Hmm.
but also in myself. I'm a big believer in practice what you preach. I think
Hmm.
that to be a good clinician, we should walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
Hmm.
And so as I have just been reflecting on like what are the themes I see in people, what are the things I tend to help people with, I saw four main themes, and
Hmm.
they are this. Um, if we want to lead lives that are regulated and to feel successful, however we define that, without feeling completely stressed out and overwhelmed, we need to prioritize flow over force.
Hmm.
Because I see so many of my high achievers, especially who are neurodiverse, they think the answer to get wherever they want to be in life is to push harder,
Hmm.
be more disciplined,
Hmm.
find the right strategy, whip their butt into gear. And I can just tell you, like, that's not it. I equate it to the old Greek myth of like Sisyphus was a character who was sent to hell and he had to
Hmm.
push a boulder up a hill for all of
Hmm.
eternity.
Hmm.
Like when we are living our lives every day trying to motivate ourselves based on force or some
Hmm.
variation of like work harder, do better, we
Hmm.
become like Sisyphus, who is just
Right.
pushing the boulder up the hill, which is literally a metaphor for hell.
Hmm.
It's just not a, it doesn't feel good. And if we want to talk practicality, right? If we're pushing the metaphorical boulder up the hill every day, we are just living every day from a place of effort, which is going to
Hmm.
result in eventual exhaustion. And the metaphorical boulder is just going to keep rolling back down.
Right. Right.
And that actually, in the long run, I think makes us less productive and sets us back farther from whatever goals we're trying to
Mm.
achieve. So I think finding flow in life over force is very important. The other theme that I have seen is rhythm over rigidity.
Mm.
So many, especially again, my high achiever, neurodiverse, ADHD women, they think the answer is more discipline. And so
Mhm.
sometimes that's sort of your inner critic pushing you, but sometimes it's also creating these rules for yourself that are inflexible and unrealistic.
Right.
And as you know, right, the one thing we can guarantee in life is that like the universe is always changing.
Yes. Change is constant.
Yes. And yet I think sometimes when people are in their day-to-day lives, you know, they can get rigid and they don't know how to flow with the rhythms of life.
Right.
And that just creates more dysregulation and more suffering.
Yeah. And more disconnection because, when we're not paying attention to nature that's all around
Mhm,
us and the flow of
mhm,
nature, like
mhm,
we've gotten very good at human beings of living in cities where it doesn't matter
mhm.
whether it's summer, winter, spring, or fall, we act like it's the same time all year long, and that just disconnects us from nature and gives us more stress instead of flowing with the natural rhythm of, winter is when we rest, fall is
Mhm.
when we harvest, spring and summer is when we plant and sow.
Absolutely. And I've had that exact conversation with my clients, especially who might come in saying they have seasonal affective
Hmm.
disorder,
Disorder. Yeah.
right? It's sometimes part of the problem is we're fighting against the natural rhythms. The world around us, modern society, is making us think we should be one way, but our
Hmm.
nervous systems, our bodies, our primitive
Hmm.
selves are still
Hmm.
trying to flow with the natural rhythms of life. And then there's that conflict.
Hmm.
And if you think of living your life in that conflict for many months out of the year, like, of course, you're going to get exhausted and
Right.
potentially even depressed, right?
Right.
You're like fighting your own nature.
Right. Yeah, 100%, 100%. But, society is so focused on making every member of society as productive as possible. And
Mhm,
if you're a woman in a leadership position, there's a lot
mhm,
of pressure on you to be
mhm,
productive. So
mhm.
how do you balance the productivity with flow?
Uh, I said your blog post was so serendipitous. I think it comes back to what you were talking about at the beginning of the episode, which is part of the process. And component three of my calm hustle method is learning to focus on internal safety versus
Hmm.
external validation.
Ah.
If you are going to rewrite the narrative around work and productivity so that your nervous system can feel safe and you can be successful, I genuinely believe that part of that is going to be a bit of facing some fears,
Hmm.
right? And part of having a good therapist or coach, I think
Hmm.
this is where a therapist or coach is very helpful, is
Hmm.
we can help people start to tease out like, when is this a moment where maybe I just need to face my fear and I almost need to like radically rest and resist the
Hmm.
urge to be productive?
Hmm.
Or when is this a moment where, based on the circumstances happening at this moment in time, you know what, maybe I do need to push through a little bit? Because I tell my clients, if we think about flow over force,
Hmm.
I'm a holistic person. I'm not going to tell you you should never have to use force and push
Hmm.
through something in your life.
Hmm.
But if we're going to put a statistical number on it, I think maybe we should be forcing through things like 10, 20, 25% of the time, maybe. I don't think that should be
Right.
sort of our primary mode of
Right.
operating in life.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Mhm.
So it's something that we do on occasion, but it's not a daily practice of pushing through things.
And the problem is for, I think, a lot of people, it's a daily practice
Yes, exactly.
instead of something they do. Oh, you know what? This situation really merits it. So, because if
Mm,
you think about it, when you're forcing, you're tapping into a lot of energy reserves. You're metaphorically pushing the big boulder up the hill.
hmm
You get it to the top of the hill, but now you are tired. So you need to also allow the space and that like
mm,
flow and the rhythm to just like recharge your batteries. Trust that the energy is going to like naturally come back, and
mm,
that instead of being productive, maybe in what society has told us we should be doing, we need to productively recharge ourselves by like taking a break, getting out into nature, meditating,
right.
doing a yoga practice, reading a
Right.
book that feels restorative.
Mm, mm. So I imagine sometimes when women come to you and they're burnt out or facing challenges, your prescription for them is take a yoga class, take a hike in nature, do something like that.
It's so DBT, which is my primary clinical orientation that I've been doing for many years,
Uh-huh.
stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. And it
hmm
means two things that seem opposite can both be true. So you can be
Mm,
productive and you can be restful or need to rest. And the reason
mm,
I share that for anyone who's listening is mindfulness, I think, is one of the most important things in DBT that we teach people with. And I think
hmm
that's why I was drawn to it as a yoga teacher who became a therapist.
mm,
Is mindfulness is like the first thing I teach people.
hmm
And often, just like you were saying today, it's the simplest things and the things that seem most basic that we come back to. And I find that the same with my clients. It's like
mm,
reconnecting with mindfulness practices over and over and over again, because
mm,
it is very easy to become disconnected from a mindful way of life in modern society.
hmm hmm I'm curious, since you are a yoga teacher, were a yoga teacher before therapist. I've heard that the idea of yoga in India is very different than it is here. That it
Mhm.
was really initially, it's a spiritual practice, not an exercise routine. But when it came to the United States over the years, it sort of morphed into this, oh, it's a great way to stay in shape or stay flexible. And I'm curious, for you, is it a spiritual practice or is it an exercise?
Um, it is not an exercise anymore. I exercise by going outside and moving my body, taking walks. I do weight training exercise. For me, I feel like when I think of yoga, it means now more a spiritual practice in terms of
Mm,
sort of how I'm sort of conceptualizing and living my life. And that is true. I'm very grateful. The yoga training program I went through was a year-long training program, which is actually
mm,
quite long. And it was an integrative yoga therapy. So they actually gave us a lot of training about the spiritual history of yoga as part of the
mhm,
process. And you're absolutely right that yoga from sort of an Eastern philosophy, basically what we think of as yoga here in the United States, it was all done to just prepare people for meditation and spiritual practice and basically get the body ready to be able to sit for long periods of
right.
time and get the
Mhm,
mind ready to be able to sit. Um, so I still think going to a westernized yoga practice is great, and I'll never tell people not to go. There's a lot that it
mhm,
offers. But I also think when I talk about mindfulness and helping my clients be mindful, I'm also perfectly happy guiding them to practices that may not be going to a yoga class or
mhm,
be thought of as traditional yoga. It could be, sitting outside in the morning and just like
Mm,
listening to the birds and being present.
mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Mhm.
Well, I'm curious if in the last 5, 6 years since the pandemic, if you notice a trend of, what women are coming to see you for, like what is it the same as before? Have things shifted at all? Do you see like today are people struggling with different issues than in the past?
I honestly think, and in the clinical mental health community, there has definitely been talk of this, that COVID was a basically mass level traumatic event.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people experience some sort of trauma in maybe different spectrums of
Mm-hmm.
intensity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
some people got sick, some people lost people to
Mm-hmm.
illness. Um, some people just lost ways of life, social
Mm-hmm.
connection. I saw that working with a lot of women in leadership and achievement oriented roles, entrepreneurs. Um, I think one of the things I saw is the social component of when we were
Mm-hmm.
all isolated.
Yeah.
A lot of women really needed that to sort of offset the daily stressors of the work that they
Mm-hmm.
were doing. And it was taken away from them for a pretty decent period of time. So I think not just in women, I think in society, we're still seeing the ripple effects. I have colleagues who are educators who are talking about the after effects of COVID, even in young children and emotional
Mm-hmm.
development. Um, I think to simplify it as simply as I can in just a couple of minutes, what I notice is people seem to be getting more just extreme in their experience. And what I mean is just there's less sort of gray area happening in the world and even at the level of people's nervous systems. I think it's much easier for people to go from I'm okay to oh my gosh, I'm completely overwhelmed, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the grocery store and this person accidentally bumped me with their cart and I want to snip at them. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think people are just more reactive.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if I put it in trauma terms, stems from not feeling safe at the level of our body. And I think that's what a lot of us experienced during COVID. And I think most people haven't gone for therapy or some sort of holistic healing, somatic healing to help their bodies work through that. And so it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I truly feel like there's this low level societal anxiety that's
Mhm.
been around since COVID that we really haven't processed or worked our way through, that's still sitting there. And so I see people on the street sometimes like yelling at other people for the most minor things that in the past would have been like, oh, watch out, and now it's like, how dare you? And and it really feels like everybody in the world is on edge. And then you add on
Yeah.
top of that all the massive changes with technology is putting upon us and how quickly the world is shifting, and that makes us even more stressed dealing with more change.
Yeah. And our brains don't have the time to genuinely rest and
Hmm.
recharge. There was a book called Burnout that was written probably 5 or 6 years ago now, probably around the time of COVID. And there's a chapter in there about rest and how much rest we
Hmm.
really need. And they
Hmm.
say actually 40% of our time should be spent resting.
Hmm.
Sleep counts,
Hmm.
but if there's 24 hours in a day, I've done the
Hmm.
math. 40% of that comes out to about like 10 and a half hours.
Uh,
If most people are sleeping 6 to 9 hours a day, that means like every single one of us, even if we're sleeping a lot, there
uh,
should be active rest woven into our day, at least probably an hour a day, maybe even more. And I
Yeah.
know very few people who are actually doing that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
technology is part of the challenge because it provides the opportunity to be constantly on, and we're never getting the rest that actually is an important part of our nervous system regulation and our productivity process.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Nikolai, it's been a pleasure having you on my show. If people want to learn more about you, find out about your work, where can they go? Can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So my website is honestly the best way. And it is ompowermentpsych.com. So it's like the word empowerment, but with an O, because we're holistic.
Um,
Empowerment. And then psych, like psychology, ompowermentpsych.com. I try to make things as simple for people as possible, especially because I work with a lot of neurodiverse folks. So if you're out there and you need support, I literally have a button up there that says schedule a consult, and it takes you directly to my booking calendar. So we can get you in to chat about what's not working and where you'd like to be as quickly as possible. And please reach out, if you need the
yeah.
support, I'd love to support you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Nikolai, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I truly appreciate you. I deeply believe in the kind of work that you do. And my wife being a somatic therapist and myself working with people, I find that the more we focus on the body, the more effective the healing, no matter what kind of healing it is it absolutely is. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you, my loyal listeners, for tuning in each week. Without you, there is no show. And don't forget, if you did miss any part of today's show, you can always catch the replay on talkradio.nyc and on your favorite social media channel and on your favorite podcasting app, Apple, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find the Conscious Consultant Hour. Thank you all for tuning in. Take care. We will talk to you all next week.